There's something about an old manor house, the way the walls seem to breathe with stories, the way the air grows heavy with the weight of secrets left untold. Tonight, we step into one of the most hauntingly beautiful tales of Gothic literature as we journey together to Bly Manor. Can you feel it? The chill in the air, the faintest whisper of movement just beyond your vision. Whether you're curled up under blankets in the quiet hours of the night or listening as dusk settles over your city, we'd love to know where you're joining us from and what time your journey into rest begins. Let us know in the comments below, because tonight, you're not just a listener, you're part of the story. Picture this, a young governess, her heart pounding as she stands at the gates of Bly Manor, the letter of employment clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The fog curls around her ankles like ghostly fingers, and the courtyard stretches before her, silent and waiting. Every step she takes echoes against the ancient stones, a sound that seems to travel far beyond the empty halls. The wind murmurs through the twisted branches of the trees, carrying with it a sense of something watching, something unseen, but she steps forward anyway, because duty calls her deeper into the manor's shadowed embrace. 2 orphan children need her, but Bly Manor, it needs something else entirely. What waits inside those walls isn't just a house. It's a living, breathing thing, a place where the past refuses to stay buried. The governess feels it the moment she crosses the threshold, the weight of eyes on her back, the way the air hums with a quiet that isn't quite silence. And as we follow her into the heart of Bly Manor, we'll uncover the mysteries that lurk in its corners, the whispers that dance just out of reach. This isn't just a story about ghosts. It's a story about the shadows we carry within us, the things we try to forget but never truly escape. So settle in, dear listener. Let the creak of the floorboards and the sigh of the wind pull you deeper. Bly Manor has been waiting for you and its stories. They are ready to be told. The first night at Bly Manor wraps around the governess like a shroud, the candle beside her bed guttering as though some unseen breath disturbs the flame. Shadows stretch long across the faded wallpaper, twisting into shapes that almost resemble figures watching from the corners. Then it comes, a melody, faint and drifting through the hallway like a sigh. A lullaby, perhaps, the one she doesn't recognize, slow, mournful, the kind of tune that lingers in the space between memory and dream. Her pulse quickens as she rises, her bare feet silent on the cold floorboards. The music pulls her forward, a siren's call wrapped in sorrow. At the threshold of her door, she hesitates, her fingers brushing the worn wood before she peers into the darkened hall. And there, adjust for a heartbeat, she sees her, a woman in a gown that might have once been fine, now tattered as if ravaged by time itself. The figure turns, her face obscured by shadows, and then she's gone, vanishing around the corner with a whisper of fabric against stone. The governess stands frozen, her breath shallow, the echo of that melody still humming in the air. Was it real? Could it have been a trick of the flickering candlelight, her own exhaustion conjuring phantoms? But then she remembers the children, Miles and Flora, tucked safely in their beds, their faces serene when she checks on them moments later. Did you hear it? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Flora blinks up at her, those wide, guileless eyes reflecting nothing but innocent confusion. Hear what? The girl replies, her smile sweet and untroubled. Miles, ever the little gentleman, merely shrugs, his expression unreadable. Too unreadable, perhaps. The governess forces a smile of her own, smoothing the blankets around them, but her mind races. This house holds its breath around secrets, and the children, they move through its halls like they belong to it, as much a part of Bly Manor as the creaking staircases and the portraits whose eyes seem to follow her. She returns to her room, but sleep is impossible now. Every rustle of the curtains, every groan of the old house settling, feels like a whisper meant just for her. And so she makes a silent promise to herself, to whatever watches from the darkness. She will uncover the truth of Bly Manor, no matter how deeply it's buried. Because some ghosts don't just haunt houses, they haunt the living, and the governess is beginning to understand. She may not be the only one who sees them. Days at Bly Manor unfold with a deceptive calm, sunlight filtering through dusty windows to paint the halls in gold. The children, Flora with her doll clutched like a talisman, Miles with his two perfect manners, move through their routines with eerie precision. But the governess catches the way their voices drop to whispers when she turns a corner. How Flora's humming trails off mid-melody the moment she's noticed. That tune, the same slow, mournful one from the night before, lingers in the air like a half-remembered dream. Miles watches her over breakfast, his gaze steady, unblinking. When she asks about the woman in white, his smile doesn't waver. "There's no one here but us," he says, his voice smooth as polished silver, too smooth. Flora giggles, swinging her legs under the table, but her doll's glassy eyes seem to follow the governess wherever she goes. She tries again, softer this time. "Have you ever seen anyone else in the house, perhaps at night?" The children exchange a glance quick, almost imperceptible before Flora chirps, "Only in stories." And Miles adds, "And stories aren't real, are they?" But the governess knows better. She feels it in the way the house breathes around them, how the children's laughter rings just a little too bright, like bells tolling in an empty church. That night, as she lies in bed, the cold seeps into her bones despite the fire's glow. She tells herself it's just the draft, the old stones holding winter's chill, until the air shifts, thickening with the scent of damp earth and old roses. Her eyes fly open. There, at the foot of her bed, stands the woman in white. Not a trick of the light, not a figment of exhaustion, solid as the floor beneath her, yet somehow wrong. Her dress hangs in tatters, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow, not empty, not gone, fixed. The governess's breath catches, her fingers twisting in the sheets, but she can't look away. The woman doesn't speak, doesn't move. She simply stares, as if waiting for recognition, for fear, for something the governess can't name. Then, slow as a shadow stretching at dusk, the woman lifts a finger to her lips. Silence, a warning. The governess blinks, and she's gone. Only the moonlight remains, pooling on the floor where the figure stood. Down the hall, a floorboard creaks. A child's whisper floats through the darkness, and the governess realizes, with a sinking certainty, that the secrets of Bly Manor don't belong to the dead. They belong to the children, and they're guarding them with a quiet, terrible devotion. Mrs. Grose's hands tremble as she pours the tea, the china clinking softly against the saucer, a sound too fragile for the weight of her words. They weren't always like this, the children, she murmurs, her voice fraying at the edges. The firelight casts deep shadows across her face, etching lines of worry deeper than the governess has ever noticed before. It started after she left. Miss Jessel. The name hangs in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. The governess leans forward, her own cup forgotten, the warmth leaching from her fingers as Mrs. Grose continues. Found her in the lake, we did. Dressed all in black, her hair fanned out like seaweed, and Quint. Oh, that wicked man. They say he slipped on the tower steps, but the way his neck was twisted. She trails off, her knuckles whitening around her teacup. A draft slithers through the room, though the windows are shut tight. The governess shivers, but it isn't from the cold. You've seen them too, then? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Grose's eyes dart to the door, then back, dark with something unspoken. Not just seen, heard, footsteps where there shouldn't be any. Laughter in empty rooms, and the children. Her voice drops so low, the governess has to strain to hear it. They talk to them, as if they're still here. The governess's breath catches. All at once, the pieces slot into place. Flora's whispered conversations in the garden, Miles's knowing glances at empty corners. The way the house seems to breathe around them, as if the walls themselves are listening. But why? She presses. Why would they? Mrs. Grose shakes her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. Love makes fools of us all, miss, even the dead. The fire pops, sending a spark skittering across the hearth, and for a heartbeat, the governess swears she sees a figure reflected in the window behind Mrs. Grows tall, lean, the glint of a smile too sharp to be kind. But when she blinks, it's gone. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, a sound like voices tangled in the branches. The governess sets her cup down with deliberate calm, though her pulse thrums in her throat. I won't leave them, she says, and the words taste like a vow. Whatever walks here, it won't have them. Mrs. Grose's face crumples, relief and dread warring in her expression. God help you then, she whispers. Because Bly Manor doesn't give up what's hers. The clock in the hall strikes midnight, each chime vibrating through the floorboards like a warning. Somewhere above them, a floorboard creaks too heavy to be a child's footstep. The governess doesn't look up. She doesn't need to. She can feel it now, the truth settling into her bones. The dead aren't just passing through Bly Manor. They're waiting, and they're not alone. The mist curls over the lake like a living thing, swallowing the edges of the world until only the water remains still, dark and waiting. That's where the governess finds Flora, her small frame kneeling at the shore, her nightgown pooled around her like spilled milk. The girl's lips move in silent conversation, her fingers trailing the surface of the water, and for a heartbeat, the governess thinks she sees another hand rise to meet Flora's. Pale, slender, the fingers shimmering like moonlight on the waves. Then it's gone, the water rippling as if disturbed by something beneath. No wind, no birds, just that unnatural ripple and Flora's laughter, high and bright as shattered glass. Flora, the governess's voice cracks through the silence, and the child turns, her smile unfaltering. She was singing to me, Flora says, as though explaining the weather. Her voice is ever so pretty under the water. The governess's blood turns to ice. She gathers Flora into her arms, the girl's skin shockingly cold, her curls damp with mist, or something else. Flora hums as they walk back to the house, that same haunting lullaby, the one that slithers through the halls at night. The governess clutches her tighter, but the melody follows them, winding through the trees like a second shadow. That night, the dream comes. Water, black and thick as oil, pours into the governess's mouth, her nose, her lungs. She thrashes, but the surface is always just out of reach, and below her, something moves a shape in the depths, arms outstretched, hair floating like dark weeds. She wakes choking, her sheets tangled around her legs, the taste of the lake still on her tongue. The room reeks of wet earth and rotting roses. Moonlight spills through the window, painting the floor silver, and that's when she sees them, footprints, small and bare, glistening with water. They lead from her door to the edge of her bed, then vanish, as if whoever made them simply evaporated. The governess presses a hand to her mouth, her pulse hammering. Flora's words echo in her mind. Under the water, downstairs, a clock chimes 3. The sound is muffled, distorted, as though the house itself is holding its breath. The governess rises, her legs unsteady, and steps into the hall. The air is heavier here, thick with the scent of damp stone, and then she hears it, the faintest splash, like a hand breaking the surface of the lake. But the lake is outside, isn't it? The governess turns toward the sound, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. Somewhere, a door creaks open. Somewhere, a child giggles. And somewhere, deep in the heart of Bly Manor, the water is rising. The key burns in the governess's palm like a shard of ice as she creeps down the hallway, her candle casting jagged shadows that leap and twist along the walls. That door, the one at the end of the hall, the one Mrs. Grose always hurries past with her eyes averted, rattles softly tonight, not from the wind, but as if something inside is testing the lock. The sound is deliberate, hungry. Her breath hitches as she fits the key into the rusted lock, the metal screeching like a wounded thing. The room exhales when she steps inside, dust swirling in the thin light, the air thick with the scent of lavender and something darker, something like wet ink and decay. Miss Jessel's sanctuary, frozen in time, a desk littered with yellowed papers, the ink bleeding through the pages, as though the words themselves are trying to escape. The governess's fingers tremble as she lifts the diary, its spine cracking open to reveal a chaos of handwriting letters slanting wildly, sentences breaking off mid-thought, as if the writer's hand had been shaking too hard to finish. He whispers through the walls. One entry reads, "Says the children are his now, says they'll never leave Bly, not even in death." Beneath the desk, a small chest yawns open, its contents spilling out, a locket, its hinge broken, the portrait inside so faded the face is little more than a smudge of eyes and a cruel, curving mouth. Quint, the governess, doesn't need Mrs. Grose's stories to recognize him. The locket thrums in her hand, cold as a grave, and for a heartbeat, she swears the eyes in the portrait flicker, following her. She drops it with a gasp, the clatter echoing through the room like a gunshot. Then she sees them, tiny handprints in the dust atop the dresser, child-sized, fresh. Miles's, Flora's, her stomach knots. They've been here, they've spoken to her, to him. The diary's final page is nearly torn free, the words gouged into the paper as if written with a nail. They don't cry for us anymore. They cry with us. A floorboard groans behind her. The governess whirls, her candle guttering, but the doorway is empty. Yet the air changes, thickening with the weight of a presence, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. From the hall, a child's voice, Flora's, sings a fragment of that cursed lullaby, soft and sweet. Then silence. The governess presses the diary to her chest, the truth coiling around her ribs like a vice. The ghosts aren't just haunting Bly Manor. They are teaching the children how to stay, and the lesson is almost over. The storm rages outside Bly Manor, the wind clawing at the windows like a beast denied entry. Rain lashes the glass in furious waves, and the governess's voice is nearly swallowed by the thunder as she calls Flora's name again and again, her throat raw with panic. The child was just here curled by the fire with her doll, humming that wretched lullaby. Now the chair sits empty, the doll abandoned on the floor, its porcelain face cracked in a way that wasn't there before. Mrs. Grose rings her apron in the doorway, her face ashen. She wouldn't have gone outside, she murmurs, but the governess is already moving, her candle trembling in her hand, its flame guttering as though the house itself is trying to snuff it out. The laughter comes first high and bright, threading through the halls like a ribbon of sound. Flora's laughter, but wrong, sharper, older. It leads the governess up the stairs, each step groaning underfoot, the air growing colder the higher she climbs. The attic door stands ajar, though it's always been locked before. From within, the faintest glow pulses, not the warm gold of candlelight, but a sickly, greenish hue that makes the governess's stomach twist. She pushes the door open, and there, in the center of the room, sits Flora. Her back is turned, her nightgown pooling around her like a shroud. She's whispering, her words too low to catch, her fingers tracing patterns in the dust. Patterns that twist and coil like the branches outside, like the roots of something buried deep. Flora, the governess's voice cracks. The whispering stops. The air goes still, and then Flora turns. Slow, too slow, the way a puppet moves when its strings are tugged by careless hands. The governess staggers back, her candle clattering to the floor. Flora's eyes are empty, not blank, hollowed out, and when she speaks, it isn't her voice that spills from her lips. It's a woman's voice, rich and mocking, dripping with a malice no child could muster. "You're too late, Flora." "Not Flora," says, her smile stretching too wide, her teeth gleaming in the eerie light. "She's ours now, just like the others." Somewhere in the house, a clock strikes the hour, though it's long past midnight. The sound is drowned by the thunder, by the rushing in the governess's ears, by the terrible, dawning realization. Flora isn't lost. She's been found, and whatever has her doesn't plan to let go. Miles' hands tremble against the windowsill, his reflection fractured in the rain-streaked glass. For once, his perfect manners crumble, his voice splintering into something raw and childlike. He comes at night. He whispers, the words tearing from him like a confession. Standing at the foot of my bed, smiling that awful smile, he says I could be just like him, that Bly Manor chooses who stays. A sob racks his small frame, and the governess pulls him close, his tears seeping into her sleeve. His skin is icy, his breath shallow, as if the very act of speaking these truths drains the life from him. The governess strokes his hair, her own pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. "What does he want from you, Miles?" Her voice is steady, though her hands betray her, shaking as they cradle the boy's face. Miles's eyes dart to the shadowed corner of the room, his pupils dilating. "Secrets," he breathes, "the kind that make you powerful. the kind that make you belong here forever. His fingers clutch at her wrists, desperate. But I don't want to belong here. The admission hangs between them, fragile as the candle flame, guttering on the bedside table. Outside, the storm howls, but inside, the silence is worse. A held breath, a waiting thing. The governess presses her forehead to Miles's, her voice a vow wrapped in steel. Listen to me. You are not his. You are not bound to this house. I won't let him take you. A floorboard creaks in the hallway, not the groan of settling wood, but the deliberate press of a footstep. Miles stiffens, his breath hitching. He's here, he whimpers. The candle snuffs out, plunging them into darkness, and the air thickens with the scent of wet leather and old whiskey. Quint's ghost, closer than ever. The governess gathers Miles against her, her arms a shield, her voice cutting through the black. You have no power here, she snarls into the void. Not over him. Not over any of us. For a heartbeat, nothing moves then. Laughter, low, rich, reverberating through the walls as if the house itself is amused by her defiance. The sound slithers under the door, coils around the bedposts, lingers like a threat. Miles buries his face in her shoulder, but the governess lifts her chin, staring unflinching into the dark. Let the house laugh, let the ghosts whisper. She'll burn Bly Manor to the ground before she lets them have these children. Somewhere in the depths of the manor, a door slams shut. The wind shrieks through the cracks in the windows, and the governess knows, with a certainty that chills her bones, the fight for Miles's soul has only just begun. The candle flickers as the governess leans closer to the vanity, her fingers brushing the cold glass to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That's when she sees it, the slightest delay in her reflection's movement, a lag between her touch and the mirrored hand rising to meet it. Her breath stills, the flame gutters, and in the sudden dimness, her reflection doesn't fade with the light. It lingers, sharpening instead, the angles of its face growing gaunt, the eyes sinking into shadow. The glass mists over, frost spider webbing across the surface, and the reflection's lips part in a soundless scream. Not hers, never hers. Miss Jessel's face stares back at her, the ghost's mouth stretching into a grin too wide for any living thing, her teeth glinting like broken porcelain. The governess recoils, her chair clattering to the floor, but the reflection doesn't mimic her panic. It presses forward, palms flattening against the glass from the other side, fingers curling as if testing an invisible barrier. The vanity trembles, the mirror's frame groaning, and the governess does the only thing she can think to do. She seizes the candle holder and swings. Glass shatters. Shards skitter across the floorboards like ice, the reflection fracturing into a dozen jagged pieces, but the laughter starts before the last fragment settles. High, wild, bubbling up from every broken slice of mirror as the frost creeps across them, stitching the glass back together before her eyes. The reflection reforms, Miss Jessel's hollow eyes tracking her even as the governess stumbles backward, her pulse a drumbeat in her throat. She runs. The hallway stretches before her, endless as a nightmare, the laughter nipping at her heels like a hungry thing. It isn't just behind her. It's in the walls, under the floorboards, woven into the very air she gasps into her lungs. A door slams somewhere in the house, and the governess realizes, with a dawning horror, that the laughter isn't chasing her away. It's herding her toward the tower, toward the lake, toward whatever waits in the heart of Bly Manor, with its arms outstretched and its smile full of teeth. And the worst part, the children are already there. The quill scratches frantically across the parchment, the governess's fingers cramping as she pours every desperate word onto the page. "Come at once," she writes, the ink pooling dark with urgency. The children are not safe here. The house, the sentence ends in a splatter as the ink suddenly bleeds outward, spreading like a wound across the paper. She gasps, blotting at it with her sleeve, but the stain only widens, consuming her words as if the very page is swallowing her plea. A draft slithers through the room impossible, with the windows latched tight, and the candle gutters, the flame stretching unnaturally tall before snuffing out completely. Darkness swallows her whole. The air thickens, pressing against her skin like damp velvet, and then, the barest whisper of touch at the nape of her neck. Fingers, cold and deliberate, tracing the line of her spine. She whirls, her chair screeching against the floor, but the room is empty, silent. Her breath comes in ragged bursts, her hands groping blindly for the letter, for the desk, for anything solid to anchor her, but the parchment is gone. Only the inkwell remains, overturned, its contents dripping onto the floor in thick, black rivulets that creep toward her slippers like tendrils seeking purchase. A laugh echoes through the walls, not the children's, not even Miss Jessel's. Deeper, hungrier, Quint's voice slithers from the shadows, though no shape accompanies it. No one leaves Bly Manor, it murmurs, the words slinking around her like smoke. No one tells its secrets. The governess stumbles back, her heel catching in the hem of her skirt, and as she falls, her hand brushes something cold and slick beneath the desk. The letter, or what's left of it, the paper crumbles at her touch, disintegrating into ash that clings to her fingertips. The final word still visible in the remnants: help. The realization crashes over her like the tide. The house isn't just haunted, it's alive, and it's been listening, watching, learning how to keep her trapped. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, but the sound is wrong, not a storm's fury, but something mimicking it, like a child's imperfect impression of a scream. The governess presses her inkai palms to her temples, the truth settling into her bones with brutal clarity. Bly Manor doesn't just guard its ghosts, it hunts. And tonight, she's the prey. Somewhere in the depths of the house, a door clicks open. A child's voice, Flora's, calls out, sweet as poisoned honey, "Come play with us." The governess closes her eyes, the ash of her unsent letter clinging to her skin like a curse. She has no allies, no escape, only the terrible certainty that the children are no longer the ones in danger. She is, and the house, it's just getting started. The nursery door slams shut with a force that rattles the portraits on the walls, their painted eyes tracking the governess as she stumbles back. Miles and Flora stand before her, their small faces twisted with something far older than childhood. Their hands are clasped together, fingers interlaced too tightly, their knuckles white as bone. When they speak, it's in perfect unison, their voices overlapping, Flora's sweet lilt tangled with Miles's measured tone. Yet beneath them both, something else thrums, a vibration that makes the teacups on the sideboard shiver in their saucers. "You don't understand," they say, their heads tilting in identical, unnatural angles. "They're ours, they always have been." Flora's doll dangles from her other hand, its head lolling backward, its glassy eyes fixed on the governess with a knowing gleam. The air between them thickens, heavy with the scent of wet leaves and candle wax gone rancid. The governess reaches for them, her voice cracking with desperation. "They're not your friends, darlings. They're..." The children's laughter cuts her off, sharp as broken glass. It doesn't sound like laughter at all, not really. It's the echo of laughter, the memory of it, hollowed out and stuffed back into their throats. Then in a blink they're gone, not running, not hiding. Simply not there, as if the house itself swallowed them whole. Only the doll remains, slumped on the floor, its porcelain face split by a fresh crack that leaks something dark and syrupy onto the rug. The governess lunges into the hall, her pulse a wild thing in her ears. The corridor stretches before her, longer than it should be, the wallpaper's floral pattern writhing like worms in the flickering lamplight. She swears she glimpses Flora's nightgown vanishing around a corner, but when she follows, the hallway doubles back on itself, the same portrait of a stern-faced ancestor staring down at her from 3 different walls. The children's voices drift from everywhere and nowhere, singing that damned lullaby, the notes slithering under doors and through keyholes. A door creaks open ahead. The library, its shelves shadowed and sagging under the weight of books no one has touched in decades. The governess staggers inside, her breath ragged, and the door slams shut behind her. The singing stops. The only sound now is the slow, steady drip of water from the ceiling, pooling around a single, small footprint on the dusty floor. Miles's shoe, unmistakable in its polished perfection, but the print isn't leading away. It's facing her, as if whoever made it was standing here, waiting long before she arrived. Then the whispering starts, not from the children, from the books, a susurrus of pages turning without hands, of words murmuring themselves aloud in voices that haven't spoken in centuries. The governess presses her hands to her ears, but the sound seeps into her skin anyway, a chorus of secrets she was never meant to hear. One phrase rises above the rest, hissed in a voice that curls around her like smoke. You can't save them. They don't want to be saved. The governess sinks to her knees, the truth a stone in her chest. The children aren't lost. They're home in Bly Manor. It's been waiting for her to realize it. The grand foyer swallows every sound, the governess's ragged breaths, the whisper of her skirts against the marble, even the frantic hammering of her heart. Before her, Quint and Miss Jessel flicker like dying candle flames, their edges blurring into the shadows that cling to the high ceilings. Between them stand the children, motionless, their faces eerily blank. Flora's fingers twitch at her sides, not clutching her doll for once, but curled into loose fists. Miles's mouth moves soundlessly, as if reciting some silent lesson. Let them go, the governess pleads, her voice raw. The words echo, bouncing off the portraits lining the walls, their painted eyes watching this final act with cold amusement. Quint's grin widens, his form solidifying for a heartbeat, the sharp line of his jaw, the cruel tilt of his brow, the way his coat hangs just a little too perfectly, as if death itself tailored it for him. He steps forward, boots silent on the stone, and the air turns thick with the scent of damp wool and something fouler, like meat left too long in the sun. Miss Jessel drifts closer, her tattered skirts trailing through the dust, her hollow eyes fixed not on the governess, but on Flora, a mother's gaze, a predator's hunger. They're happy with us, she murmurs, her voice the rustle of dead leaves, happier than they ever were with the living. The governess's knees threaten to buckle. She's out of time, out of tricks, out of everything but the one truth that burns in her chest brighter than fear. She lifts her chin, and when she speaks, her voice doesn't shake. Miles, she says, firm, clear. The boy flinches, his fingers twitching. Flora, the girl's lashes flutter, a spark of recognition flaring in her dull eyes. The ghosts hiss, their forms rippling like disturbed water. Quint lunges, but the governess doesn't retreat. She steps forward, her hands outstretched, not in defense, but in offering. You remember, don't you? She whispers, and now her voice does break not with terror, but with love thick and unwavering. The day we fed the ducks by the lake. The stories we read by the fire, the way the sun came through the nursery window in the mornings. For one impossible moment, the house holds its breath. The flickering ghosts still, the shadows recoil, and in the silence, something shifts. Miles's shoulders tense. Flora's breath hitches. A flicker of warmth returns to their eyes, fragile as the first light of dawn. The governess doesn't smile, doesn't dare hope, but she holds her ground, her hands steady, her voice a lifeline thrown into the dark. Then the chandelier above them shatters, glass raining down like ice, and the moment splinters with it. Flora's scream splits the air like shattered glass, her small hands clawing at her temples as if trying to tear something out from inside her skull. Her knees buckle, sending her crashing to the floor, her nightgown pooling around her like water. Across from her, Miles collapses too, his polished manners crumbling into raw, gulping sobs that shake his entire frame. The governess throws herself between them and the advancing ghosts, her arms spread wide, her body trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer force of standing against the storm that is Bly Manor. Quint's face contorts, his handsome features twisting into something monstrous, his mouth stretching too wide, his teeth glinting like knives in the flickering candlelight. Miss Jessel writhes beside him, her form unraveling at the edges, her dress dissolving into smoke and shadow. They snarl, the sound not human, not even ghostly, just hunger given voice. But the governess doesn't flinch. Instead, she begins to whisper. At first, the words are lost beneath the howl of the wind, rattling the windows, the groan of the house itself protesting this defiance. Then her voice grows stronger, steadier, rising above the chaos like a candle flame in the dark. A childhood prayer, simple and sweet, the kind sung over cradles and bedtime stories. The kind meant to keep monsters at bay. The air shudders, the portraits lining the walls tremble in their frames. For one impossible moment, the ghosts flicker, their edges blurring, their forms thinning like mist burned away by morning light. Quint's snarl cuts off mid-breath, his face slackening with something almost like surprise. Miss Jessel's grasping fingers freeze mid-reach, her hollow eyes widening. And in that heartbeat of stillness, Flora gasps. Her hands fall from her head, her fingers uncurling like flowers after a storm. Miles lifts his face from the floor, his tears still wet on his cheeks, but his eyes are his own again. Clear, terrified, alive, the governess doesn't dare breathe. The prayer lingers on her lips, its power humming in the space between them. The ghosts reel back, their forms wavering, their rage faltering. Not gone, not defeated, but weakened. and for the first time since she stepped through Bly Manor's gates, the governess understands. The house doesn't just feed on fear. It starves on hope. Then the lights go out. The manor shudders around them, the very walls twisting as if the house is alive and furious. Glass explodes inward from the windows, shards raining like jagged hail, as the governess drags Miles and Flora against her, their small bodies trembling. The front door looms ahead, their only escape, until it slams shut with a crack like thunder, the lock clicking into place with dreadful finality. Quint's laughter coils through the air, low and rich, closer than it should be. Too close, the governess whirls, shielding the children with her body, as the hallway behind them darkens, the shadows stretching into unnatural shapes, long fingers, grasping hands, the outline of a man where no man stands. Flora whimpers, her fingers digging into the governess's sleeve, while Miles presses his face against her side, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The walls groan, the sound deep and guttural, like a beast wounded. Paintings tilt on their hooks, their subjects' eyes rolling toward the trio with silent accusation. The floorboards buckle underfoot, warping upward as if roots push from beneath, hungry to trip them, and still, the laughter follows, wrapping around them like a noose. The governess reaches for the door handle, her palms slick with sweat. It burns cold against her skin, the metal searing with a chill that sinks straight to the bone. She doesn't pray, doesn't beg. Instead, she presses her forehead to the wood and whispers 3 words, not to the house, not to the ghosts, but to the children clinging to her. Hold on tight. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then a click, soft, delicate, the sound of a key turning in a lock that shouldn't exist. The door creaks open, just an inch, and the night air rushes in, sweet with the scent of rain and earth. No howling ghosts, no grasping hands, just the dark, waiting expanse of the garden path beyond. The governess doesn't hesitate. She shoves the door wide, half dragging the children over the threshold, as the house lets out a final, shuddering wail, the sound of something ancient and furious being cheated of its prize. The second their feet touch the gravel path, the door slams shut behind them, the impact shaking the ground beneath their feet. But Bly Manor isn't done yet. From inside, something scrapes against the wood, long, slow, deliberate, like fingernails, and then, faint but unmistakable, a child's voice, not Flora's, not Miles's. A third voice, sing-song and dripping with false sweetness, calls after them. You'll come back. Everyone always comes back. The governess doesn't look behind her. She tightens her grip on the children's hands and runs. The first light of dawn paints the sky in pale gold, but it doesn't touch Bly Manor. The great house crouches behind them, its windows dark even as the sun rises. No, not dark. Full, shadows press against the glass like faces, their outlines shifting, merging, dissolving only to reform. The governess doesn't need to count them to know who they are. Quint's arrogant tilt of the head, Miss Jessel's hollow stare, and others, so many others, their features blurred by time, but their hunger sharp as knives. Mrs. Grose stumbles forward from the gate, her apron streaked with mud, as if she's been kneeling in the dirt for hours. Her hands flutter over the children, patting their arms, smoothing their hair, her touch desperate with the need to believe they're real. Flora, Miles, her voice cracks on their names. Flora blinks up at her, slow and dazed, like someone waking from a dream too terrible to name. Miles sags against the governess's side, his breath coming in shallow gasps, his fingers knotted in her skirt. "They are alive," the governess says, and the words taste like a miracle. But Mrs. Grose's eyes dart past her, widening at something over her shoulder. The governess doesn't turn. She doesn't need to. The weight of the manor's gaze prickles between her shoulder blades, the sensation of fingers brushing the nape of her neck, though no one is there. Then Flora whimpers, not in fear, in recognition. Her small hand lifts, pointing back at the house, and the governess finally turns. The front door stands open. Not a crack wide, gaping, an invitation, or a challenge. From within, the faintest sound drifts. A music box, its melody warped and slow, playing that cursed lullaby. The governess's blood turns to ice. Mrs. Grose seizes her arm, her grip bruising. "Don't look," she hisses. "It wants you to look, but it's too late." The children are already staring, their eyes fixed on the doorway, their faces slack with something between longing and dread. The governess wrenches them around, pressing their faces into her skirts, but she hears it, the soft, wet sound of footsteps on the gravel path. Not running, not chasing, just walking, patient, certain. The governess doesn't wait to see what emerges from that open door. She gathers the children against her and runs, misses. Grows at her heels, their breaths ragged in the morning air. Behind them, the music box plays on, and the door, it doesn't close, not even when the manor vanishes into the mist. Not even when the first real rays of sunlight finally pierce the clouds. Some doors, once opened, can never be shut again. The new house smells of beeswax and drying herbs, its walls thin enough to let in the golden afternoon light, but thick enough to keep the silence at bay, most of the time. The governess watches Flora kneel by the garden fence, her small hands burying seeds in neat little rows, her lips moving in quiet conversation with no one. Or perhaps with someone only she can see. Miles sits beneath the oak tree, a book open in his lap, but his eyes haven't turned a page in hours. His gaze lingers on the horizon, where the sky meets the distant hills, as if waiting for something to emerge from the green. At supper, Flora giggles when Mrs. Grose drops a spoon, the sound bright and sudden, too sudden like glass, breaking in an empty room. Miles cuts his meat into perfect squares, his knife scraping the plate with methodical precision. The governess counts the seconds between their breaths, the way their laughter sometimes cuts off mid-note, their eyes darting to darkened corners. They never speak of Bly Manor. Not directly, but sometimes, when the firelight flickers just so, Flora's fingers twitch toward the empty chair beside her, as if expecting to find a doll there. Not the one Mrs. Grose bought her in the village. This one is plush and soft-eyed. Nothing like the cracked porcelain thing she left behind. Night is the worst. The governess tucks them in, smoothing the quilts with hands that no longer tremble. Or so she tells herself. She leaves the door ajar, a wedge of light from the hallway spilling across the floorboards. Some nights, she wakes to the sound of Flora's humming, that same cursed lullaby drifting through the house like a draft under the door. Other nights, it's Miles she finds standing at the window, his palms pressed to the glass, his breath fogging the pane as he whispers words too low to catch. Tonight, the house is silent. The governess blows out the candle, the scent of smoke curling around her as darkness swallows the room. She tells herself the cold is just the autumn wind, finding its way through the cracks. tells herself the whisper against her cheek is nothing but a stray lock of hair stirred by the breeze. But when she closes her eyes, she doesn't dream of meadows or sunlight or the children's laughter. She dreams of water, black still, stretching endlessly beneath a moonless sky, and somewhere in the depths, something hums back.